when a routine traffic stop spirals into a career-defining moment. A police officer's worst assumptions clash with a truth he never expected. His target turns out to be the one who holds his future in his hands. It was late afternoon, and the sun was sinking low over the sprawling streets of Atlanta, casting long shadows across the pavement. The skyline in the distance shimmered as golden light reflected off the glass towers. Marcus Reynolds was on his way home, exhausted from a long day of meetings. His black sedan rolled smoothly down Peachtree Street, the hum of the engine offering a brief respite from the stress of the day. The air conditioning was set just right, and the soft jazz station played quietly in the background. As he approached a red light, Marcus slowed, but it was a long one, so he took a moment to check his phone. That's when the bright blue and red lights suddenly flashed in his rear-view mirror, accompanied by the sharp sound of a police siren. Marcus glanced up, brow furrowing. He'd slowed down in time, hadn't he? Pulling over to the side, he rolled his window down as the squad car came to a stop behind him. Out stepped Officer Derrick Hayes, a man in his mid-30s with a strong jawline and a sharp military buzz cut. Hayes adjusted his belt before swaggering toward Marcus's car, his boots clicking loudly on the pavement. He looked every bit the part, young, confident, and in control. License and registration, Hayes said coldly, his voice firm but not unfriendly. Marcus, doing his best to stay calm, handed over his documents, feeling the officer's eyes on him the whole time. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Hayes asked, leaning in slightly. "I'm not entirely sure," Marcus said, his voice even and polite. "I thought I stopped for the light in time." Hayes hesitated, then shrugged slightly. "You didn't come to a complete stop. Just a warning. You were in a bit of a hurry, though, weren't you?" Marcus felt the shift in energy. It wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. There was something else in the air, something that made Marcus uneasy. Hayes was no longer just the officer doing his job. He was sizing him up, looking for something deeper. "I was just trying to get home," Marcus replied, his tone calm but firm. Hayes didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced down at the license in his hand, his eyes narrowing as if the information didn't quite add up. "You from around here?" Hayes asked suddenly, as if it was just another question, but it wasn't. Marcus caught the subtle edge in his voice. "I've been here for a few months," Marcus replied, his hand gripping the steering wheel just a little tighter. "The address is on my license." Hayes nodded, but there was a pause before he asked, "Where were you headed?" "You in a rush?" "Just going home," Marcus answered, keeping his voice steady, but a hint of tension creeping into the air. Hayes didn't seem convinced. His eyes locked on Marcus. And for the first time, Marcus realized the officer wasn't looking at him like a driver. He was looking for a reason to escalate things. "Step out of the car," Hayes ordered suddenly, his hand already moving toward his belt. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his posture didn't change. He was ready for this. This was not his first run-in with overzealous officers. "Is there a reason I need to step out, officer?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice even. Hayes smirked, though it wasn't a friendly one. "Just get out. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus sighed, opening the door slowly and stepping out, his eyes scanning the officer's face for any sign of hesitation. There was none. Hayes's hand hovered near his holster. "Hands on the car," Hayes said sharply. "Let me check you." Marcus didn't flinch. He just complied, raising his hand slowly and pressing them against the hood of his car. "Routine search," Hayes muttered, but Marcus could tell there was no routine to this. It wasn't about the stop, it was about control. As Hayes patted him down roughly, his hands lingered a bit too long. A power play. "Clean," Hayes grumbled, stepping back. Marcus took a breath, but didn't speak. He was silent, just observing the officer. "You seem pretty calm for someone who's been pulled over," Hayes commented, his voice laced with suspicion. "What? You think you know the system better than I do?" Marcus's gaze met his. "I know my rights, officer. That's all." The silence stretched between them as Hayes processed the words. For a moment, the officer was rattled, but only for a moment. Hayes leaned in closer, tried to assert control again. "You think you're smarter than me, don't you?" "I'm just doing my job here," Hayes said, his voice getting more agitated. Maybe you should think about what your job really is, Marcus said, his voice quieter but sharp. It's about serving and protecting, not just making assumptions. Hayes' eyes flashed, but he didn't respond. The tension was palpable. You really think you can talk to me like that, huh? Hayes pressed. Marcus remained unfazed. I'm just calling it how I see it. The two men stood there for a beat, the standoff hanging thick in the air. Marcus could see Hayes beginning to question everything. Then, as if a switch flipped, Hayes took a step back, but the officer didn't relent. All right, he said, voice still heavy with hostility. Let's take it to the next level. Hayes gestured for Marcus to face the car again, but this time his voice cracked with frustration. I'm not asking again. Hands on the hood. Marcus complied, but a calm dread filled him. He knew what was about to happen, and it was no longer just about the traffic stop. Hayes patted Marcus down again, a quick, hasty movement. His hands searched in all the wrong places, his eyes flicking to the driver's seat of the car like he was hunting for something, anything, to justify what was happening. You're clean, Hayes muttered after a beat, but it didn't sound like a relief. It was more of a dismissal. Marcus straightened up. So now what? Hayes stiffened. You think you're the first guy to pull this stunt? Try and be clever. Huh? Think you can talk your way out of this? I don't think you get it. I don't think you do, Marcus shot back, his eyes hardening. I've been on the other side of this far too many times to be intimidated. Before Hayes could respond, Marcus's calm voice broke through the tension. I'm sure you've seen a few things in your day, officer, but I bet you've never had someone like me standing in front of you. He paused. Because you don't know who I am yet. There was a long silence before Marcus slowly pulled out a leather wallet from his jacket pocket. Hayes stiffened as he watched, eyes darting to Marcus's movements. Marcus flipped the wallet open slowly. I'm Marcus Reynolds, he said, his voice calm and unwavering. I'm the head of internal affairs for the Atlanta PD. The officer froze, the color draining from his face. Internal affairs? Hayes echoed, his voice barely a whisper. Yeah, Marcus said softly, his voice slicing through the air. And I oversee officers like you. You've just made a big mistake. Hayes stumbled back a step, his entire demeanor falling apart. The confident swagger had vanished. His hand instinctively reached for his belt, but it was too late. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued, his voice icy. You're going to step back, return my documents, and rethink everything you've just done, because I promise you I won't forget this. For a second, Hayes just stared at him, his mouth agape, no words coming out. Then, after a long, painful silence, he handed back Marcus's license and registration, his hand trembling slightly. Marcus took them without a word, stepping back into his car. Just remember this, he added as he closed the door, his voice calm but deadly serious. The badge doesn't make you better than anyone. It holds you accountable to everyone. Marcus drove off, leaving Hayes standing in the middle of the street. The drive home was quiet, but Marcus's mind was anything but. The encounter replayed in his head, not because it was a rare occurrence, but because it wasn't. Officer Hayes wasn't the first corrupt cop Marcus had crossed paths with, and he knew he wouldn't be the last. But this time, things would be different. This time, Marcus had the power to do something about it. The next morning, Marcus sat at his desk in the Internal Affairs Division of the Atlanta Police Department. The early sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows across the cluttered office. In front of him sat a file. The name on the cover, Officer Jonathan Hayes. Marcus skimmed the file. Hayes' record wasn't perfect, but it wasn't glaring either. Minor complaints. A few allegations of misconduct, but nothing substantial. Complaints about excessive force, vague accusations of unprofessionalism. Each case had been brushed under the rug. And now Marcus knew why. It wasn't just about one man. Hayes was just a symptom of a much larger problem, a culture of corruption that had flourished in the department for far too long. And Marcus wasn't interested in patching things up. He wasn't about to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Rachel, stepped inside, carrying a stack of reports. "Morning, Lieutenant Porter," she said, setting the files down on his desk. "I've got the summary on last month's misconduct cases, and Chief Daniels asked if he could join the department review meeting next week." Marcus nodded, taking the reports. "Thanks, Rachel. Could you also schedule a meeting with Chief Daniels for this afternoon? I've got something I need to discuss with him." Rachel hesitated for a moment, sensing the gravity in his voice, but nodded and left the room. Marcus turned his attention back to Hayes' file, but his focus wasn't just on this one officer. This was bigger than just one case. It was about the entire culture that allowed someone like Hayes to get away with it. It was about the system that protected him, and the system Marcus had sworn to fix. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat across from Chief Daniels in his office. Daniels, a man who had seen it all in his years on the force, leaned back in his chair, listening as Marcus recounted the details of the encounter with Hayes. "I could have brushed it off, Chief," Marcus said, his voice steady. "It could have been just another bad interaction. But I can't do that. Hayes' actions aren't isolated. This is a bigger issue. We've got a culture problem." Daniels pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. "This isn't the first time Hayes' name has come up, Marcus. But it's always been handled internally. Quietly, we've kept it in-house." "That's the problem, Chief," Marcus replied. "Quiet doesn't fix anything. It lets the rot fester. It lets the culture thrive. We need to take a stand, loud and clear." Daniels leaned forward, his expression hardening. "What are you proposing?" "A full department review," Marcus said without hesitation. "Not just a review of individual officers, but of our training, our protocols, our accountability systems. If we don't hold ourselves to a higher standard, how can we expect the community to trust us?" Chief Daniels sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "You know this is going to ruffle some feathers." Marcus didn't flinch. "Good. It's about time someone did." In the weeks that followed, Marcus was relentless. Meetings, interviews, community forums. He worked tirelessly to compile data, to speak with officers, and to hear directly from the community. The incident with Hayes became a catalyst for change, a turning point that forced the department to confront its flaws head-on. Hayes, for his part, faced an internal hearing. Marcus didn't hide from his involvement. He was present during the proceedings, watching as Hayes shifted uncomfortably under the pressure. The hearing ended in a suspension for Hayes, but Marcus knew that the real victory wasn't in punishing one man. It was in preventing the next Hayes from rising up. Months later, Marcus stood at the podium during a community event, addressing a room full of officers, city officials, and local residents. He spoke not of blame, but of responsibility, of the shared duty to create a system that worked for everyone. "It's not just about holding the bad guys accountable," Marcus said, his voice firm and resonant. "It's about making sure that everyone who wears this badge does so with integrity, fairness, and respect for every person they encounter. That's the badge I believe in. And that's the badge we're building here, together." The applause was loud, but Marcus didn't let it distract him. This wasn't the end of the road. It was the beginning of a new chapter. As Marcus stepped down from the podium, he glanced over the crowd, some skeptical, some hopeful, but all listening. He knew change wouldn't come overnight, but it was already beginning. And for now, that was enough. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's start the conversations that matter, the ones that lead to real change. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Stories that challenge us, inspire us, and remind us of what we're capable of when we stand for what's right.